Week 9 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire this week. The first quarterback, Tua, the Miami Dolphins. Tua finally had a big game for this Dolphin team. This year, he's only had 3 big games all season long. In Week 8 of Atlanta, in a tough matchup, he went out there, had a performance, 205 pass yards and 4 touchdowns. The last few weeks for Tua, Week 6 versus the Chargers, 205 pass yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions, 4 rush yards. Week 7 at Cleveland, a horrible game, negative fantasy points, 100 pass yards, 3 interceptions, 6 rush yards. In Week 8 at Atlanta, like I said, 205 passing and 4 touchdowns. So Week 9, a good matchup on paper versus the Baltimore Ravens. Give up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And Tua, we know they got okay options in the offense, even with Tyreek Hill out for the season and Darren Waller out at least 3 more games with the pec injury. Obviously, got A.J. out of the backfield, got Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, found the end zone in last week's game. So Tua, if you need a streaming option in Week 9, on paper, it's a good matchup. And Miami's back home, and he's available right now as Tua in 81% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback, Aaron Rodgers of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers just makes the list out there in 53% of fantasy leagues, and for the most part, he's been a pretty solid quarterback for fantasy owners, where touchdowns he's been getting is Aaron Rodgers more than anything. The yards haven't been great, but touchdowns have been there for him. Week 6 versus Cleveland, 235 pass yards, 2 TDs. Week 7 in Cincinnati, 249 passing, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 6 rush yards. And Week 8 versus the Packers, 219 passing and 2 touchdowns. So Week 9, okay matchup versus Indianapolis. I know they're 7-1, one of the best, if not the best teams in the league. And they give up 13th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So I think Indianapolis, if it's the usual game script, they'll get off to a good start and then obviously make this Steelers team have to pass the football more and one-dimensional. But like I said, Aaron Rodgers, he's having a bounce-back season this year, even though last year he was good at times with New York, but not as consistent as he is this year in fantasy football. So right now, even with a mediocre matchup coming up, he's a quarterback I would add this week. Next quarterback, Sam Darnold, the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks team was on bye week, and Sam Darnold's had a good season so far for Seattle, and even for fantasy owners, he's had some decent ball games. Sam Darnold, Week 4 at Arizona, 242 pass yards, a touchdown, 24 rush yards. Week 5 versus Tampa, 341 passing, 4 TDs and INT. Week 6 at Jacksonville, 295 passing, 2 TDs. And Week 7 versus Houston, a down game, 213 passing, a touchdown, an interception, and that one and a fumble loss. So Sam Darnold, obviously you got Jackson Smith in the Jigler, got Cooper Kupp, even though his better days are behind him. A.J. Bonner in that offense who's having a good year at the tight end position. And you got Horton at times who contributes as well. So with those factors and a good matchup coming up here in Week 9 at the Commanders that give up the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season, I think Sam Darnold could go out there and be a decent option for fantasy owners. And he's worth an ad this week, available right now in 64% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback, J.J. McCarthy of the Minnesota Vikings. So J.J. McCarthy is going to come back in as a starter. And we know this offense has a ton of playmakers. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, and then a backfield of Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. So this offense, the last couple of weeks, numbers haven't been great. McCarthy, we haven't seen him since Week 2 with a knee injury. Week 1 in Chicago, first few quarters of that game, he looked horrible. And then all of a sudden, third, fourth quarter, he got it going. 143 passing, 2 touchdowns, interception, 25 rush yards, a touchdown, 2-point conversion. And then Week 2 versus the Falcons, where he got hurt, 158 passing, 2 interceptions, 25 rush yards, a fumble loss. So this week he'll be back, it looks like, at Detroit. Tough matchup to go in there in Detroit, obviously, where their defense for the most part has been playing pretty good football. But like I said, this is the division matchup, and now McCarthy really has to get things going after he's been out, like I said, since Week 2. So if you're in deeper leagues and need a quarterback, McCarthy's out there in tons of leagues as well, in 77%. And the final quarterback, Mac Jones of the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know when Brock Purdy's coming back. He's practicing over the last couple weeks in limited capacity, but Mac Jones continues to start for this 49er team. And I know they lost, but he's a guy that's a competitor. He stays in there, makes the plays. And like I said, he's been playing pretty decent over the last 4 or 5 starts. Week 6 at Tampa, 347 passing, 2 INTs, 13 rush yards. Week 7 versus Atlanta, 152 passing and into 11 rush yards. And then week 8, he mounts back in that game, was Mac Jones, 193 passing in that ball game, 2 touchdowns, and INT, 23 rush yards, 2-point conversion. So week 9, a good matchup at the Giants. 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And like I said, Mac Jones is going out there and making the most of what he has right now. So that's a few quarterbacks I look to head off the waiver wire for week 9 of the fantasy football season.